At the beginning of the film, we are shown a car containing 6 teenagers having a tire burst in the middle of the road. The car swerves at high speed, causing one of the women to hit her head. This group of teenagers consists of 3 women and 3 men, of which the woman in the pink dress is named Sarah. The woman in the green jacket is named Karen, and the one who hit her head is named Jody. The boys consisted of a guy in a blue shirt named Jeff, a guy in a shirt named Tut, and his friend in a white shirt named Eric. The point is, they all want to go to their sister Jody's birthday in a remote town. It's so remote that you can count on your fingers the number of cars that pass by this route in a month. At first, everything went fine and nothing was suspicious at all. Tut, the owner of the car, planned to replace the tire with a spare tire. Especially since they had 3 men, this was not a complicated matter. Under these circumstances, Sarah still had time to take a selfie to post a status on her social media. However, because the location is so remote, signal coverage in this place is very difficult. Out of curiosity, Karen walked in the opposite direction for 3 meters. And that's where the network was detected. A few minutes later, the weather was so hot and stifling that Jody and Karen took shelter behind the car. So did Eric, who had to pee and went straight to the bushes. Worse, Tut, the owner of the car, was busy going out with Sarah and let Jeff change the tire. Not long after that, Jody and Karen followed to take shelter behind the car. Yes, of course Tut, being a pussycat, leaves Jeff alone. Jeff, who was about to change the tire, was troubled by a slight dip in the road that caused the tire to roll. As he picked up the tire, Jeff accidentally saw a bullet in the middle of the road. On the other hand, his friends were busy chatting, and the other one was relieved to have peed. In the middle of their conversation, Tut saw the rolling tires of his car and chased him down the street. At the same time, Sarah intends to see the condition of the tire that has been replaced by Jeff, but she is immediately surprised when she sees Jeff dead. Because of her shock, Sarah, who saw it, was just silent without saying anything. Tut, who took the tire, still didn't realize that something was wrong here. Unfortunately, in such a short time, Sarah had to be hit by a shot that came from nowhere. Karen and Jody also still hadn't realized that there was a threat in front of them. Sure enough, Sarah's eyeball had been pierced by a bullet, and at that very moment, she had to take another shot to her body. From there, Karen saw the situation around her and she didn't know where the bullet came from. Without thinking, she immediately shouted and told her friends to take cover behind the car. Tut, still not expecting it, was caught off guard and was shot in the left shoulder. Eric, who didn't have time to approach the car, had to take cover behind a tree trunk. They continued to be shot at relentlessly and could only rely on the car for shelter. None of them expected that this moment of tire burst would turn into a catastrophe. It was clear that the tire burst was caused by a trap set by the shooter. An hour later, they began to get confused in their trapped state. Karen, who is the daughter of a military family, assumed that the shooter was using a silencer so the shots didn't ring out. In addition, the fact that the bullet had penetrated the car meant that the person was quite far away from their position. Tut, who suffered a gunshot wound to the shoulder, was limp and unable to move much. Even more pitiably, Eric could only stay behind a tree trunk and hope for a miracle. On second thought, the car tire that Jeff had replaced was actually already installed and just needed to be tightened. But what else could they do? They had to find another plan to get out of here alive. Not long after, Karen said that in the opposite direction, 3 meters away, she was still getting a signal on her phone. At that point, Tut, who was trying to extend her hand, was immediately handed a selfie stick by Jody from her pocket. Before that, Karen had also set up Google Assistant to call 911 immediately if there was a signal. Without hesitation, Tut pointed the phone and got a signal. Unfortunately, just as Karen yelled for 911, the cell phone was shot by the psychopath from a distance. For the second plan, Todd planned to put the car into neutral gear so that the car could be pushed back to the position where the signal was received. They set up a formation, with Jody standing by in the front to film the source of the shot, while Karen was in the back holding a fake person. Todd then tried to get inside the car door and put the car in neutral. At that moment, the orangutan was immediately shot and Todd got into the car while trying to stick the key in. But because he was shot continuously, he dodged in advance and did not have time to neutralize his gear. The good news is that Jody managed to record the direction of the shot, and it appears that the shooter's position was up in the tree. It was clear that someone with a sniper was in the tree while disguised. The purpose of this person was also unclear, but it was clear that he was certainly in the tree for a long time. Then, Todd, who still hadn't neutralized the car's gears, tried to look for protective equipment. Coincidentally, she saw her toolbox in the back of the car. At that moment, Karen was desperate to take the box. Todd, who managed to get the toolbox, immediately used the metal lid as hand protection. On the other hand, Eric could only surrender and did not know the plans of his friends. After that, Todd, who had already put the protector on his hand, immediately told Karen and Jody to take a position in such a short time. Todd got into the car and managed to neutralize the gear. However, he was hit by a gunshot to the hand, and instantly, the car went downhill. Karen and Jody couldn't help but try their best to hold the car. Allahu, it was so hard to hold the car that Jody's grip slipped, causing her to bounce off the car. In the end, the car's unbolted tires were immediately shot and made the car stop. Right away, Karen realizes that this is the perfect time for Jody, as the shooter is reloading his bullets. At the same time, Eric tried to escape from his position, but he was shot first instead of Jody. As a result, Eric couldn't go anywhere with both legs shot off. With conditions like that, Eric should have been shot to death. But the shooter deliberately let Eric suffer until he bled out. An hour later, Todd saw a water bottle still left in the car seat. In this predicament, they all shared as much as possible, even though they were all thirsty. Eric, who was just about to take a sip of water, was shot in the hand and suffered even worse. Even though long-distance psychopaths are also humans who feel thirsty and hungry because they can't go anywhere. Jody, who had to pee, inevitably peed next to him because then Toddy saw his girlfriend's body being eaten by a crow, feeling unacceptable. Innocently, he desperately walked up to Sarah, who was already dead in the middle of the road, but the great thing is that the mysterious shooter did not immediately shoot the top inside. Instead, Todd still had time to kiss his girlfriend and hold the wrong hand in the middle of the road. On the other hand, Eric, who was dying, saw a wolf approaching him. If it was like this, the clamping resigned because the wolf would eat him alive, while the top, who challenged the shooter, accidentally saw a car passing in the distance. This is a rare event with such a small chance, but unfortunately, at that moment the top began to be shot at and made the wolf not eat Eric, so obviously Todd had to die on the spot and lay next to the body of his girlfriend. At this point, only Karen and Jody were left alive. At that very moment, the driver saw Karen and Jody. He waved, but unfortunately, the woman's hand had to be shot and hit her ring finger. As a result, blood had to spurt everywhere and all over the car. It got even worse when the steering wheel went out of control. The car had to nudge Todd's car in front of it, causing Jeff's head to fall off his body. As a result, Karen and Jody's only hope had vanished in an instant. The woman driving the car began to regain consciousness, albeit with severe injuries. However, not long after that, she was hit by several shots from the shooter. So was her husband, who tried to save his son, who was thrown away. He kept getting yelled at by Karen and Jody to stay behind the car. At this moment of desperation, Karen told the man to call 911. coincidentally, he was already in a position that had signal coverage. The shooter, who no longer knew where the man was, started shooting at the car tank until it leaked. In the end, the car had to explode and there was no more shelter for the man. You can see for yourself, slowly, the father had to die with a burnt body. Meanwhile, across the street, the child of the two parents was still awake with injuries. Just as he woke up, the long-distance psychopath shot him in the head. From these few minutes, instead of getting better, Karen and Jody had to witness death after death. They were at a loss as to how to get away from the remote psychopath if even a relief car couldn't cross this road. Eventually, Karen comes up with an idea in which the two of them must act at nightfall. Karen said that the shooter's view becomes more difficult when there is smoke at night. As night fell, the mysterious shooter was still monitoring the scene and didn't miss a second. Then, Karen, who was ready with the cutter, planned to tear up some of the seats in the car. On the other hand, Jody took a bottle of gasoline, a bag of clothes, and a drink box that she found in the back trunk. Luckily, there were still 2 drinks in the box, which they immediately drank. After that, Jody took t-shirt after t-shirt in the bag to use as emergency masks. Without lingering, Jody poured a bottle of gasoline into the car seat, and Karen lit the newspaper with a lighter. Eventually, the car began to burn and create smoke in an instant. However, the smoke was still not enough to give them a chance to escape. From the smoke, the long-range psychopath began to get annoyed because the visibility of his sniper was getting less and less clear. But suddenly, Karen saw a police car approaching their location. This indicated that the 911 call the man had made had been successfully connected and tracked. In fact, the police also brought 2 snipers who were ready to stake out the shooter's presence. Then, the policeman who had just arrived realized that the situation at this location was not good. So, he asked the state police for additional help. Yet again, the jaw of his mouth was hit by gunfire from a mysterious person. Just then, unluckily, the policeman collapsed at the wheel, causing the pedals of his car to be suddenly stepped on. From that opportunity, Karen immediately invited Jody to run, but Jody refused on the grounds that she was still not brave enough. Inevitably, Karen had to run alone. And unfortunately, the smoke started to thin out. At that very moment, she was hit by a gunshot and died on the spot. Now, the 4 policemen were down to 2. At that very moment, Jody was desperate to run towards the police car that was not far away. At this moment, there was a shootout where it was clear that the shooter was better than the police. Then, Jody, who had no other choice, immediately took the police car. She planned to crash into the only tree that served as cover for the shooter. Amazingly, Jody managed to do this and make the shooter fall out of the tree. Jody immediately woke up and tried to pick up the gun that had fallen, while the shooter continued to try to cut the rope that tied him to the tree. From here you can see for yourself the mysterious shooter who is so intent. This person really has nothing else to do and is deliberately in the tree to wait for victims. But clearly, throughout the movie, we are not told who he is. The urgency of the situation makes Jody frightened and becomes hasty. At that very moment, she shoots the man multiple times until he dies on the spot. Still not satisfied, Jody needed one more shot to shoot the mysterious man in the head. However, while loading the bullets, the cock of the gun suddenly stuck. Inevitably, Jody hit the man with the tip of the gun to the point that his face was mangled. Then, Jody noticed some scratches near the man. You could say that these lines mark how many people have been shot dead on this road. As a farewell, Jody wanted to hit the man's head one more time. Unfortunately, the gun was cocked and shot Jody mercilessly in the neck. That's the truth. If I may make a suggestion, it's better to cut the scene until the shooter is dead. The lesson of this movie is to always be vigilant when traveling, especially to remote places, and don't underestimate emergency situations. Cooperation and preparedness can save lives. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more exciting content.